This split-screen visualization tracks the Persian Gulf before and after the conflict. On the left, in early February 2026, shipping lanes were densely packed and oil sat at a stable $70 a barrel. On the right is the reality just 2 months later, shipping traffic at zero and oil spiking to $139 a barrel. The catalyst occurred on February 28th. During nuclear negotiations, a massive US and Israeli preemptive strike hit Iran. The operation achieved its immediate tactical objective, the simultaneous assassination of Iran's political and military leadership. Standard military doctrine assumes that rapidly eliminating a state's command structure induces systemic collapse and swift surrender. But in this conflict, the sudden decapitation triggered the exact opposite result: an automatic, highly decentralized, and asymmetric escalation. To understand why the state did not fracture under this pressure, we have to map the 2026 escalation matrix. It reveals how an outmatched military absorbed a total conventional defeat by outsourcing its survival to regional proxy networks and geographic choke points. The resulting conflict proved that mutually assured destruction no longer requires a nuclear arsenal. It can be achieved entirely through economic warfare. The opening offensive, codenamed Operation Roaring Lion by Israel and Epic Fury by the US, was overwhelming. Allied forces struck 500 distinct targets and dropped over 1,200 bombs in the first 24 hours. Months of intelligence deception convinced Tehran that an attack was not imminent, allowing Allied forces to catch senior officials gathering in person. This organizational chart shows the immediate impact of the decapitation strikes. Within the first few weeks, Allied forces eliminated Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Defense Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh, and National Security Council Secretary Ali Larijani. Western air supremacy in the region was absolute. For the first time in history, an Israeli F-35 stealth fighter shot down a crewed Iranian Yak-130 in active air-to-air combat. That dominance extended directly into the maritime domain. A US submarine sank the Iranian frigate IRS Dina in the Indian Ocean, showcasing total control over the region's sea lanes. But the Iranian state did not collapse. By March 8th, the system had structurally adapted, rapidly installing an interim leadership council and elevating Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader. Rather than fracturing under the pressure, the internal security apparatus rigidified its control, initiating a near-total internet blackout that cut connectivity to just 1% of normal levels. The preemptive strike succeeded as a demonstration of conventional military supremacy, but it failed to neutralize the regime's capacity to retaliate. In response to the decapitation, Iran's military shifted its operational doctrine. Instead of relying on a centralized command structure in Tehran, they activated a pre-planned, decentralized network of proxy forces. This node map illustrates Iran's escalation matrix, initiating Operation True Promise 4. Coordinated drone and missile strikes hit US installations in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, and the UAE. Retaliation was massive, reaching 563 strikes in the UAE and 191 in Bahrain. This dispersed the Allied defensive focus. In Lebanon, Hezbollah launched an intense campaign of rocket fire. Hezbollah's involvement forced a severe Israeli ground invasion, formally opening a second, highly destructive warfront to the north. By March 28th, the Houthi movement in Yemen joined the conflict, firing ballistic missiles at Eilat and expanding the active threat envelope into the Red Sea. Conventional militaries are optimized for force-on-force combat against centralized states. They are not designed to simultaneously suppress highly distributed, autonomous militias operating across multiple sovereign borders. Because these proxy networks operated independently of Tehran, the initial assassinations did nothing to slow the missile barrages. Horizontal escalation allowed Iran to absorb catastrophic conventional losses at home while inflicting distributed chaos abroad, neutralizing the advantage of the preemptive psych. By the third week, Iran pivoted from direct military retaliation to pure economic warfare. The trigger was a series of intense US and Israeli strikes on critical Iranian energy infrastructure, including the South Pars natural gas fields. Allied forces then launched a large-scale attack on military targets at Karg Island, the hub responsible for 90% of Iran's oil exports. This map details the geography of Iran's ultimate retaliation. With Karg Island compromised, Iran leveraged its control over the adjacent Strait of Hormuz. This narrow transit corridor handles 20% of the world's seaborne oil trade and 50% of global urea and sulfur exports. By mid-April, the escalating retaliations over this choke point created a devastating dual blockade. On one side, the United States utilized carrier strike groups and P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft to intercept tankers, effectively sealing off all Iranian ports. On the other side, Iran enforced its own blockade through a strategy of asymmetric sea denial, deploying a fleet of cheap, highly maneuverable fast attack craft. These small, agile vessels were used to aggressively lay sea mines directly within the main international transit corridors. The threat of unmapped sea mines dropped commercial shipping traffic to zero, stranding over 150 large freight ships in the Persian Gulf. The targeted strikes on oil infrastructure and the attacks on shipping created severe localized environmental hazards and widespread physical damage to maritime assets. The dual blockade proved that a state does not need to win a naval battle to control the sea. Cheap, asymmetric area denial weapons can enforce a global economic embargo that neutralizes a superpower's trillion-dollar naval supremacy. The conflict's stalemate was cemented on April 11th when the US and Iran failed to reach an agreement during high-level talks mediated in Islamabad. Diplomacy failed because the very nature of the war had shifted. A surgical operation designed for nuclear preemption had degraded into a grinding regional logistical siege. This macroeconomic dashboard tracks the global fallout. Asian petroleum reserves depleted rapidly, gasoline prices in the US surged, and global stock indices absorbed massive volatility. The United States military unequivocally proved its tactical capabilities. It dismantled Iran's conventional navy, suppressed its air defenses, and eliminated its leadership at will. But tactical military success did not translate into strategic victory. Iran demonstrated that it could absorb a total conventional military defeat while simultaneously inflicting intolerable macroeconomic costs on the entire global system. In the modern era of interconnected trade, total air and conventional naval supremacy cannot override geography. The war proved that holding the global economy hostage doesn't require nuclear weapons. It requires a proxy network and a narrow strait.